Okay, so I'm going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about Final Fantasy X because there's a lot of like chatter and chat on the internet about a possible remake and like Square Enix's first like PS6 game. And I think that it was it was solid all the way until the end where he chooses to die and acceptance. Like, I get it. It's for Yuna. It fits the story. But him fighting the faith would actually fit that narrative much better. The cycle of sacrifice, rebellion against destiny, and questioning whether higher powers deserve obedience just because they created something. And he's already rebellious in nature. He's already like, no, I don't have to listen to your rules. No, I don't care who God is. So I understand like the faith is exhausted from dreaming endlessly. And Tidus accepts their need to rest, even though it means losing himself. And that gives it that bittersweetness, which was great writing at the time. But it's time to flip it because we've grown now. So the creators need to kind of take a step forward here and go all the way to the end until Tidus goes to be sent into the endless void of death and dissolution and non-existence. He's gonna die anyway. He's gonna not exist anyway. Why not fight it? And you can already see that Tidus grew through this adventure, this story. Yuna needs to be led, and she was, but all the way until the final part to where it's time to become real. So he needs to assert his right to exist instead of full erasure. The faith want to end the dream permanently. Tidus should argue that consciousness born from dreaming is still life. And the final conflict becomes less about defeating sin and faith and more about proving that identity isn't invalid just because its origin is unusual. And that would shift the ending from beautiful acceptance, which we already have, to existential self-determination. More tragic hero energy instead of just surrender. It also lines up more with Tidus, how he stands out as a protagonist compared to many other characters in the series. He's emotionally direct and intensely alive. Watching someone like that calmly disappear is powerful, but watching him fight for existence would hit in a completely different way. We're not helpless to celestial beings. In fact, we're stronger. We're just unaware and a weaker version of ourselves in this material world. So a lot of that actually shows up in a lot of mythology, philosophy, and Final Fantasy stories. Humans start out believing gods, fate, and cosmic systems, that they're absolute. Then slowly realize these powers depend on belief, obedience, fear, and ignorance to keep control. Tidus and the party eventually stop seeing themselves as powerless participants in a sacred cycle and start acting as agents capable of changing the structure itself. That's part of why the story resonates. It's not just kill the monster, it's question the system that taught everyone the monster was inevitable. In real life, though, it's important to separate, spiritual ideas and celestial beings and, focus on self-mastery, awareness, and overcoming fear. But we can merge these ideas here where people often underestimate their own agency. Social systems condition passivity, and awareness and confidence can radically change how someone experiences life. And that's the evolution that you see Tidus make from whiny jock to divine being and in full control. So the Aeons here could actually assist here because they're questioning the endless cycle too. So Bahamut already acts almost like a guide for Tidus, so he would join on the fight. The Faith themselves are conflicted and exhausted, not purely tyrannical, So an internal split among them would make sense narratively. Anima could represent suffering and rage against this sacrifice. Yojimbo would side with the side that offers true freedom and purpose. And the war of the faith angle would actually be epic. Some wanting rest and oblivion, which Tidus will give you, dude. He will kill you. Others believing their dreams have become real enough to deserve continuation. And that kind of conflict would turn the ending from quiet tragedy into a mythic rebellion story. He could still die and lose against these guys, and you would still get your tragic hero story, but at least let him finish what he started here, because he grew so strong and then, oh, I give up. But that doesn't actually make sense. So he needs to go up against the faith. All right. And could he win? He could win, because if the faith sided with him, and then also you could have integration with him and Yuna, because they're each other's half. So if they came together, which they did, but if they actually make it a little bit more mature here towards the end of the game, where they notice their strengths and their weaknesses and they supplement each other, they would become one whole perfect union and one whole perfect being, and the Aeon and the faith would have underestimated that. So, he's already going to die. He's already going to, why not fight? And you can already hear Tidus saying, if I'm only a dream, then let the dream choose for itself. And that would fit that emotional tone of the series very well. So, and it changes the game, which is what we want to do anyway. You don't want to just remake exactly the same. It's time to change the symbolism from the original ending of acceptance and release, which we've already accepted and played, to a new version of self-determination against cosmic inevitability. Neither is wrong here. They just express different philosophies. One finds peace in impermanence, and the other finds meaning in resisting erasure, even when the odds are impossible. And that tension would make such a good game. And right, the integration of Yuna and Tidus could become a whole enough power to win. Like, they could have enough power together to win. And that actually mirrors the deepest themes of Final Fantasy X. Two incomplete people becoming stronger together. She doesn't know he needs to lead her, even at the end here, to fight the faith. So in a symbolic sense, their integration would become something greater than either could be alone. Tidus gives Yuna the will to challenge destiny, and Yuna gives Tidus grounding and purpose beyond rebellion. Together they bridge dream and reality, people. He's the dream, she's the reality. So that union could become the exact thing that the faith underestimated. A consciousness born from a genuine connection rather than just a summoned memory. And that's very consistent with a lot of JRPG storytelling too. Emotional bonds becoming literal, metaphysical strength. Love, memory, sacrifice, and identity often reshape reality in those worlds. So that's what this was missing here. They were so close in 10, but they shouldn't have let it go so quick. They should have had that emotional bond, becoming that super strength enough to fight the faith and grant immortality, or at least existence. So you could imagine the ending, the climax, being less about brute force and more about transcendence. Tidus no longer sustained solely by the fate's dream, but by mutual recognition, memory, and the lives that he's changed in spirit. That would turn him from a dream being maintained into a new form of existence. So I'm going to send this to Square Enix. I'm going to send this out. I really hope they pick it up. They really need to remake this one. It deserves a new shiny layer. It deserves a new ending of fighting God. Even if you lose, dude, you can have the same bittersweet ending, but at least give the guy his ability to control his destiny and his existence, even if it's not on his terms, but it would be on his terms. So this would be super powerful. They've already done it with Lightning Returns, where you go up against Yaldabaoth, you go up against Benevelza, you go up against God, Satan, whatever you want to call him, and determine your own destiny. That your light is brighter than the other aeons, or whatever you want to call it. So this could really work. So I really do think that they need to remake this, because the other endings were satisfying, but 10 was not it was satisfying. It was bittersweet, but man, this is a heroic game. And why would you have him rebel, fight, rebel, and then just give up? It doesn't make sense. What makes sense is rebel till the end. You're gonna die anyway. Why not try? Thanks, guys.